attachment and attachment style. So basically, the dictionary defined attachment as an emotional bond between an infant or a toddler and a primary caregiver, or an enduring emotional bond that develops between two adults in an intimate relationship. Attachment style was defined as the way a person typically interacts with others, which is usually significant others, and they can be seen in our everyday behavior. So, as I said before, attachment begins with the infants and children and the relationship that they have with their primary caregivers, and it continues over their lifetime and eventually enters their romantic relationships. So, the three types of attachment that were mainly talked about were secure, anxious, and avoidant. So, in a study that was done by Hazan and Shaver, they used different descriptions in order to discover the attachment types of the participants of their study. They used it basically as a type of love quiz. So, for secure attachment, these were people who found it relatively easy to get closer to others. They were comfortable depending on others and having others depend on them. They didn't often worry about being abandoned or someone getting too close to them. For anxious attachment people, they found that they were reluctant to get as close as they would like to others. They often worried that their partner doesn't really love them or doesn't want to stay with them. They want to merge completely with another person, and this desire sometimes seems to scare people away. Avoidant attachment people were somewhat uncomfortable being close to others. They found it difficult to trust others completely and difficult to allow themselves to depend on others. They are nervous when anyone gets too close to them, and often love partners want them to be more intimate than they're comfortable being. So basically, Mary Ainsworth did a study, and she wanted to test the infant parent separations in order to get an idea of the attachment that each child had with their parents. So she had the children in the room playing with toys and had the parents, or usually just the mother, playing with them. And what she did was she would remove the mother from the situation, and she would observe the way that the children would act in the absence of the mother. And then she would introduce the mother back to the child and have them interact with the child, and basically would observe how the child acts when they came back. So with secure attachment, the babies with this type of attachment would cry in distress when the mother left, and then when she returned, they would happy and they would interact with her. So another thing I found about this type of attachment is that someone with this form of it has a healthy view of the self as well as a healthy view of God when relating it to God. And also, secure children are said to develop open, flexibly emotion expression with a dominance of positive affect. A form of attachment that I didn't write up here, but it still relates, is insecure attachment, and this is when the children were anxious or clingy and they would cry when the mother left, but then greet her with anger when she returned. The second type of attachment that I was talking about is avoidant attachment. So, children with this form of attachment were not too distressed by the separation from their caregivers, but they actively avoided seeking contact with their parent, or sometimes turning their attention to play with the objects or toys on the floor when the parent returned. So these children basically displayed a pattern of minimizing the expression of negative affects, mostly fear and anger. It was almost as if they didn't really have an emotion toward the parent when they came back. So in love, these type of attachment people, they fear intimacy and they believe that romantic love is doomed to fade. There's two types of avoidant attachment that were mentioned, which were fearful avoidant attachment and dismissing avoidant attachment. So the third type of attachment that I wanted to talk about was anxious attachment. So with this attachment, the children would cry and fail to explore confidently when the mother left from the scene, and when she returned, they would have an angry protest directed toward the mother, which was probably a result of the feeling of abandonment. Anxious attachment, the big thing about it is that it is the fear of abandonment. These individuals feel like they will be abandoned by their lovers or whoever their caregivers are. Anxious lovers report a love life full of emotional highs and lows, obsessive preoccupation, a greater willingness than others to make long term commitments, and extreme sexual attraction and jealousy. So, another thing that was talked about this week is temperament. So, basically, temperament is defined as the constitutionally based individual differences in reactivity and self regulation in the domains of affect, activity, and attention. So, in this definition, affect is basically used synonymously with emotion, and constitutional basically indicates that temperament in biology based and influence over time by heredity, maturation, and experience. Temperament refers to constitutionally based individual differences in reactivity and self regulation, and historically has been linked to the biology of the person. So, the question that I chose to answer for this week's module is, with regard to attachment styles, what type of external factors would help shape these models as the individuals grow throughout their lives? So, what I found was that experiences that children have during childhood shape their attachment styles as the individual grows throughout their lives, and also the relationship that the children have with their caregivers, parental attachment figures, whether they're attentive, responsive, caring, etc., are also things that can help shape the models. Hazan and Shaver found that adults who were secure in their romantic relationships were more likely to recall their childhood relationships with parents as being affectionate, caring, and accepting, which means that this obviously had an effect on how their attachment formed in their lives and with their romantic relationships later on in life. So the next part of this question was, is it possible to change your attachment style? So I thought about, with this question, I thought about myself. And I thought about, in previous relationships, how it seemed as though I had different attachment styles in the past relationships that I was in. And basically, it indicated that attachment style was capable of changing in certain situations or for certain individuals. And it seemed as though my attachment styles changed as the phases in my life changed. So, according to Burge and Hammond, attachment fluctuations can occur in some females because of adverse earlier experiences in their life. So, an example of this could be an individual being in an abusive relationship that can cause their attachment style to change in future relationships as a result of that previous relationship. So the next page is just my references, and that is basically it.